Well, with that, let's begin. I'm going to read our scripture. Let's pray first. Father, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this series on your words. I pray that as we come to the conclusion of it, we would understand that this is just the beginning of an adventure and a journey that we can renew every day with you. I thank you for the wisdom of your people and people seeing all the value in each of these fruits of the Spirit, God. I pray that we would be a place of peace and love and self-control and patience and kindness and gentleness and goodness. Your words, not ours. Thank you for that. In your name, amen. Amen. All right, well, we are after the party. After the prayer, so after the party. I don't know why did I say that in my email by chance, after the party? Because it's been in my head, after the party lately. So sometimes I might just put that. So after the prayer, and we are finishing after the prayer today, finishing all of this series, which I've said has taken us since January, I believe, to get through. And it is such a blessing to be able to have gone through this. There's nothing... When we come into these places, when we come into a church, and when you come into a relationship with somebody, you want to make sure that there is no hidden motives in that. And so what we want to be as a church is a place that has no hidden motives. I'm going to read this a little bit. You'll notice that I missed the narrow gate if we've been following through. The narrow gate was never missed. It was actually in January. That takes a lot of memory to be able to remember that we talked about that last January. So this is all kind of culminating because basically the narrow gate is taking us into this from where we were to where we're at. This is a very difficult road to walk, but it's not one that is one that hasn't been walked, especially by Jesus, fully man, fully God. So let us read the word of the Lord. Matthew chapter 7. Verse 15, a tree and its fruit. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorns or figs from thistles? In the same way, every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit will be cut down, thrown into the fire. Thus, you will know them by their fruits. This whole idea, we're going to look into this understanding, and it's kind of first I want us to take a backup picture, and we'll get into it in a bit, is that we understand that there is difficulties in this life. We understand that within a church and within our religion and within our faith, there is the truly people that have the love of Jesus, and then there's what we call here false prophets. We live in the Okanagan. We are blessed now to live in the Okanagan, and we are also blessed to have a peach tree. We lived in Kamloops for a long time, and we had a peach tree for 3 years, and the first 2 years of it, nothing came of it because it's young, and then the third year, everything came of it, but we had moved away, so we never got any of those peaches. Then we planted our peach tree, and in the first 2 years, of course, nothing came of it. And I think the third year, we got a few peaches, and then last year, there was no peaches. I think we all knew that there was no peaches, no grapes, nothing in the Okanagan. It was a very sad year for the fruit of the tree of the peach. This year, we have all the peaches. And if you were at our house, and you may have saw this, almost like a weeping willow of a tree, because there was so much weight weighed down on it of all the peaches. And we have so many peaches now. And there's really nothing better. I'm not a huge fan of fruit, but I really do love peaches. And you bite into that first peach of the summer, and it is wonderful. It is amazing. But every once in a while, you bite into a peach that has rot. And it is the worst experience you'll ever have in your life. Let me take you to the Shuswap. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, and we went camping. We went to a humble campground. We'll call it a humble campground in the Shuswap. I came from Calgary. We came to the Shuswap. I went to the corner store and bought myself my favorite chocolate bar, an Eat More. I was so excited about this Eat More. Of course, you're a kid. You get down to the lake. I might have been younger. I don't know. Get down to the side of the lake. You open up your Eat More. You're very excited. You take a bite out of it. Everything looked normal. All the nuts were in, all that nougaty, whatever lovely goodness was there. I took a bite out of it. After I took a bite out of it, I looked down, and a maggot came out of my... I didn't know if I was going to say that word, but here we are. There was something wrong with my Eat More bar. Now, just so you know, this should have turned me off Eat More bars for the rest of my life. I still love them. They're fantastic. But I took it back to the owner and I said, look, there's something wrong inside my Eat More bar. And he said, look, you put that there. And I said, why would I, a 9-year-old, go find this little insect, and whatever it is, I'm not going to use the word again because I saw your reactions and no one liked me when I said that word. Put it in there and take it back just so I could have a different Eat More bar. No, I would have liked to eat my Eat More bar. See, the thing is, when there's something wrong inside, things get spoiled. So we have this beautiful peach, and we have what's inside a peach. You will bite into a peach, and if you find rot, then that will be unappealing to you. And you will be scared when you go and bite into a peach again. You'll be nervous the next time you go and bite into Eat More. If you are a normal person, you will not eat an Eat More bar again, but I did, and I love them. But if you bite into something, and if you go into it expecting one thing and find something completely different, there will be disappointment. So what's inside the church? The church is supposed to be, in all of its beautiful glory, it's supposed to be a place of kindness, peace, patience, goodness. But the problem is, there is this idea of the false prophets that come in within our ranks, and they hurt, and they steal, and they kill, and they destroy. And there is this sense of distrust in the church. See, the thing is, you come into a community, you come into this community, and what do you find? You find humans, you find humanity, you find all of us with all of our issues and all of our warts and everything that we have that isn't perfect. But what we are trying to do, we are trying to point to the perfect. If you come into a church that points to Jesus, you will find a good church. It will not be perfect. And you've always heard it said, if you find the perfect church, leave that church, because you will make it imperfect. So when you come into, good, I got a new one. When you come into a place, if you find a church, you will see that it is imperfect, but if it is pointing to Jesus, it is as perfect as it will ever be. And find yourself in that place and stay in that place. It's not going to look perfect. It's not going to do things perfect. It's not going to be perfect all the time. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. See, let's talk about a little bit of this Barna research. You ever heard of Barna? Barna has lots of research. Why is church on the decline? Church is on the decline because there's a decline in institutional trust. There is this trust that has been broken over the years that has made it difficult to trust going into a church. Those that have made their name synonymous with religion have broken the trust. And that makes it difficult to walk into a church again. The thing is, you've heard about the news, if it bleeds, it leads. You've heard of that before? That was when we used to have. So in the news, you will start off your newscast with some kind of depressing, sad story, usually about someone, a loss of life, because that brings attention. That brings something good. So what we want to celebrate in church is the goodness that happens, but what people see and what people will cling to is when there is institutional distrust. When something comes up wrong, that will get the headlines. And of course, it should get the headlines because there's a trust that is broken. Non-Christians view the church with skepticism. That's possibly because of the tax breaks that the churches get. The purpose of a tax break is so that we can be giving into our community. But what has happened with a tax break is it has become something to line pockets. And we ought to be careful with that. And this is the thing. This is not widespread. This is just a few examples of these things happening. But when something like this happens, it will get personified, it will get magnified, and people will be like, I'm going to cling to that negative thing that happens. So people will leave the church because they see the negative that happens, because we talk about the negative that happens. And that's why there's skepticism. There's untrust of people like me, pastors, because of the abuse of power, because of the abuse of authority. There's a view that churches are disconnected to their communities. That they just want those tax breaks. They want to close their doors. They want to separate themselves. But I want to tell you something. I've been on staff at 5 churches. Center Street Church in Calgary, which is massive. We're talking I think it's 10,000 people now. It's a big one. I was a part of that church. And I want to tell you something. They were connected into their community. Just because you're a big church doesn't mean you're not connected into your community. Summit Drive Church in Kamloops loved being a part of the community. Willow Park Church absolutely has a heart for the Rutland area. I was talking to Joel the other day, and you know how you go on Facebook groups and you search something and it says, I need someone in the Black Country, not Black Country, that's where I lived in England. We'll go back to that one too. Black Mountain, I don't know if I was thinking Black Forest, I was thinking Black Country, Someone's talking about in Black Mountain, they said, I need someone that can give me spiritual care. It was just a random post. And Joel said 50 or 60 out of the 70 or 80 comments pointed to Phil, because Phil is the pastor there, because people know that Phil cares for the community. And we need to celebrate when somebody is celebrated for caring for the community. There's so much bad press. So it's beautiful that every church I've been a part of cares deeply for the community. And I hope and I know that Valley Road will do the same. And there's a perception of churches being inauthentic, without integrity, and we want to get away from that. But this is the thing. Of all that negativity I just spoke about, actually there are people that want to come back to church. You'd be surprised. People actually want to come back to church. People actually want the old hymns that they learned when they were kids. They have that nostalgia for when there was something pure and simple about the bride of Christ. They want that realness. The thing is, church is all of these things. Church in its beautiful, most perfect example is what we want. I was talking to Becca. She used to lead worship. She's moved up north, and she misses the church so much. Even when the church hasn't been the best, you miss the church because of all these things, because of realness, because of multi-generational belonging, because of meaningful relationships, because of social justice, because of intellectual stimulation. Ironic again, Jordan. Because space for questions and doubt, because character matters. The church has gotten a rough ride and a bad rap, and I need to confess when I have done that as well. Because there's times that you're going to go through your relationship with the church and be like, the church isn't good. Yeah, if it's the first things where there's mistrust, there's distrust, there's a whole bunch of things that are going wrong, why would you want to come and spend your Sunday morning in that space? But when you find a good space, when you find a Christ-centered space, when you find a loving community, hold on to that and make it more loving. Because the last one there, character matters. People want genuine. They want to bite into that peach and trust that what's on the inside was intended. The next time I bit into an Eat More bar, there was a bit of skepticism. I got to be honest with you. I mean, although I was a dumb 7-year-old, whatever age I was, I probably just went on. But I would have hoped that there would have been a little skepticism. Now it's still in the back of my mind, and every time I see an Eat More bar, I'm like, that's funny, gross. There's this beauty in the redemption of what the church is, that yes, and I'm sorry if you've been hurt by the church. And I apologize if I've been part of that hurt or whoever's been part of that hurt. We don't want that hurt. So there needs to be repentance. But the key is that character matters. And when our lives are centered on Jesus, and when not just me, the pastor, when each one of us have our lives centered on Jesus, people will want to come into this place. They will want to be a part of a place that they're welcomed and they're cared for. And every Sunday morning they come and they're excited to be here. Why would they want to come to a place that they're not welcomed or excited to be there? Or have people excited to see them? We want to be that place where people are excited. Because we long for the days and we long for the potential of the church, because the church is the bride of Christ. The beauty of who the church is who we are ascribing to be, who we are efforting to be, who we want to look like is like the bride of Christ, is like Jesus. And he has chosen to work through us. So that is a overview of what we're talking about today. So we're just going to break down quickly. Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. What is a false prophet? I'm just going to give you a few things here. False prophet is someone who is looking for easy street, who wants the wide open pathways, that it actually doesn't revolve around centering on Jesus. Because easy street isn't revolved around the sacrificial love of who Jesus is. But the narrow gate, the narrow path, the way of the Sermon on the Mount is absolutely centered in on the sacrificial love of who Jesus is. So when you see someone that has taken the easy street of ignoring the idea of the Sermon on the Mount completely, think to yourself, that might be somebody that may have an issue. We want to avoid people that don't practice what they preach. This is a comment that I get when I get home sometimes after church. And maybe I'm sad, or maybe I have the preaching blues, or maybe this or that. And Liz, in a loving way sometimes, Jordan, make sure you practice what you preach. Or she'll be like, Jordan, practice what you preach. You just said it. But we need to practice what we preach. We need to practice what the scriptures say. We've just spent this 8 months in the Sermon on the Mount. Finding ways to practice this is of absolute importance. False prophets have no accountability with finances in the church, and we understand what that means, and then sexual deviance as well. See, the thing is, there's a whole bunch of things that have happened in the church that, again, I am sorry when these things have happened. See, Jesus is Jesus. Jesus knows all. It doesn't take someone to operate in the prophetic gifts to see when fruits are good and fruits are bad. It says later, those that say, Lord, Lord. I'll read it here, just so I don't get it wrong. Not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter in the kingdom of heaven. That is a big verse, and one that I'm not prepared to break into today. But what we need to know is that if you say that the gospel is only once you say a prayer, you're saved and you have nothing else to do, no more responsibility in the kingdom of heaven, you are giving a deformed understanding of the gospel. Because the gospel is supposed to transform us into being kingdom-like people, being people like Jesus. So if we say that you only need to believe and you'll be saved and then nothing else matters, there's no change in your life, then perhaps you need to reassess what it means to really believe in Jesus. Because to be a false prophet is someone who's basically missed the whole message of the Sermon on the Mount. Love those who hurt you. Blessed are those who mourn. To say that Jesus is Lord means to live it out, means to live the life of the narrow gate. So yes, a false prophet seems to have missed the entire Sermon on the Mount. However, before we start casting stones, let us know that there is times in our lives that we have all missed the point of the Sermon on the Mount. It's not an us and them thing. It's not like, ugh, those guys, those girls, they have missed the point completely. No. The temptation is always that we will miss the point of the Sermon on the Mount. Because it's not always easy to mourn. It's not always easy to care for those who hurt you, to love your enemies. Those are difficult things to do. So we always need to be aware. We're going to get to this bit of sheep's clothing in a second here, because you will know them by their fruits. Again, you don't need to be a prophet. But unfortunately, fruits can be deceiving. There's some trickery involved. You guys ever seen the books, the Little Red Riding Hood? You guys know Little Red Riding Hood? That's a classic, okay? Like In the Secret and Little Red Riding Hood. They're both one and the same. So Little Red Riding Hood, you have the wolf, and it has like just a bonnet on, and the wolf is still sticking out completely. You can totally tell that it's a wolf, people. This is not something that is wild and crazy. You see it. You're like, oh, if every wolf looked like that, no problem. But we actually have Scooby-Doo happening, when they have the masks on, and they keep on tearing off the masks in Scooby-Doo. You remember the cartoon? You're like, oh, I can't believe he's the bad. Whoa, it's not him, it's the bad guy. Unbelievable. Fruits can be deceiving. And we need to pray that we have discernment. Because those false prophets, the wolves in sheep's clothing, they can look deceiving. We have to identify good fruit. We have misjudged good fruit a little bit. Big congregations, charismatic messages, book deals. Someone has a book deal, they must be doing well. Swoony eyes, I just thought I'd put that one in there. But also prophecy and good deeds. This is confusing now, Jordan. Why are you saying that? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. Are all these things inherently bad? No, big congregations are not bad. Small congregations are not bad. But just because you have a small congregation doesn't mean you're doing well. And just because you have a big congregation doesn't mean you're doing poorly. These are just random happenstances. And perhaps that's the way God works in this situation and that situation. It has nothing to do with blessing. It has only to do with just how the cookie crumbles in this moment. Who knows where we're going to go as a church? It doesn't matter where we're going to go as a church. All that matters is that we constantly center in on Jesus and be as close to him as possible. So congregations, big congregations, are not an indicator either way. Charismatic messages are not an indicator either way. Book deals and all of the like, people look like you're being blessed, is not an indicator of good or bad. We have to be so careful with how we see and perceive things online. We will see what looks to be good, but we got to be careful with that. That's not always good. It just matters about the heart of Jesus. Paul makes the same point, and we had you read that before, in Galatians 5:22-23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance. We never said forbearance. You guys missed forbearance. Kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against these things there is no law. You are not breaking the law if you do all of these things. So let's just remember that in the first place. The good fruit isn't always obvious. There's this parable in Matthew 21. It's a short one. It was in one of our kids' books, and I go back to it every once in a while. Matthew 21. It says this, the parable of the two sons. It says, what do you think? A man had two sons, and he went out to the first son and said, son, go and work in the vineyard today. And he answered, I will not. But later he changed his mind and went. And the father went to the second son, and he answered, I'll go, sir. But he did not go. Which of the two did the will of the Father? The people said, the first son, of course, the one who eventually went. And then he says this, and I think this is challenging. Truly I tell you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are going into the kingdom of God ahead of you. Just because someone doesn't bear fruit at the beginning doesn't mean their shot is done. Just because someone doesn't look like the religious center of what we want to see doesn't mean there's no good fruit that can come out of them. So good fruit can be deceiving, and so can bad fruit. Our grapes and thorns, our grapes gathered from thorns and figs from thistles. In the same way, every good tree bears good fruit, and the bad trees bear bad fruit. This one I have to think about a little bit. How does this one actually come through? I used to think that agreement was the only way that someone could have good fruit. So if I go to a church and I'm in this church that has this certain theology and they're doing really well, then that's good. And if I see a church that has completely different theology than me, but they're really loving people well, I'd be like, well, how is that happening? They're probably not doing really well because I think they disagree with me theologically, and that doesn't make sense. Churches on every single side of the theological spectrum can love people well, and churches on every single side of the theological spectrum can love people poorly. It's not we often say that it's what we think, we think to ourselves, it's what we think about Jesus that's the most important, but no, it's how we act like Jesus that's the most important. I think there's a thought below the surface of evangelical Christians that says agreement is being a good person. Like I said, we have placed what we think of Jesus as higher importance than how we love like Jesus. There are plenty of areas that we can disagree on, but disagreement doesn't make thorns and thistles. Lack of love does. You can have the greatest thoughts on Jesus, but if you have not love, you will become that thorns and thistle where no good fruit can come from, or you can't grab the good fruit. There might be good fruit within those thorns and thistles, but if you can't get to it because you don't have love, what is the point? Will there be full agreement from everyone here? No. But what we want to do is love well. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will know them by their fruits. You won't find good fruit from a bad tree. You won't know them by agreement or disagreement. You won't know them. You will know their fruit by their love. They won't be perfect. And then it talks about this. They'll be thrown into the fire. I'm not going to go there today. I just think to myself, let's concern ourselves with how we are going to love each other. And we will let God be the judge of what happens at the end. With the interpretation that God is love. So then we get into this verse. Darn it, I thought I edited everything. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the ones who does this will, the will of my Father in heaven, on that day will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name? Then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Go away from me, you who behave lawlessly. Older versions say evildoers, but the Greek here does say the lawless people. And if you were to go back 8 months to the beginning of our Sermon on the Mount, when I had this bold idea that we were going to memorize this thing, never happened. Did anybody memorize this? You get the socks if you memorize this whole thing. Good for you. You did? Who did? You did! Oh. Did you really? Oh my, that's amazing. I have an idea for next week. We're going to test you. No, just joking. We're not going to test. Wow. Good for you. Thank you for doing that. I apologize for not doing that. I tried. And then it got wild. It was like, got the first bit. If you're new here, we did say at the beginning that we're going to try to memorize it, and some people are better at listening than others. I did not do a very good job. But at the very beginning, I'm not going to test you, Gina, at the very beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, the disciples came to them, and he began to speak to them. And he talked about fulfilling the law. And what the law was the law was of love, pointing towards love. Every single thing in the law was about love and about caring for others. Every single thing that is in the Old Testament law is not to be abolished, but is to be fulfilled through Jesus. See, then we get to here, 1 Corinthians 13. If If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have the faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all that I possess to the poor and give over my body to the hardships so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. These are beautiful indicators of a good church. If I give all that I have to the poor, well, that's a good church. But I don't have love, then I gain nothing. If we have prophecy, if we have words that we can speak into people's lives, gifts of knowledge, all of those things, all those beautiful gifts, but if you don't have love, you really have nothing. Because then we go to these words that bring so much peace in our hearts. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails. But when there are prophecies, they will cease. When there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But with completeness comes what is in part disappears. This is why we separate love, because love is who God is. And the completeness of who love is, everything else disappears under that, because love is the center. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only reflection in a mirror, but then we shall see face to face. No, now I know in part, then I will know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. As I finish, just a few things to think about. We need to watch out for the fruit, for the good fruit. It's not always on display. It's not always on display here because there's this beauty and humility where people don't always get to know what you're doing. Those that have a good character and good fruit will probably go largely unnoticed because they're doing good things with none of us in mind to get praise and glory and adoration, only with Jesus in mind. So just be on the watch for good fruit, because it's there. Outside of our walls, there's good fruit. I was going to get a video on there. I never did in the end. But there's this lovely video of a Sikh man who I don't know if you saw it. He goes to delivery service for this lady and drops off her package. And then he leaves, and he notices that her wash is all on the line. And it's raining. And so he takes the next 3 minutes just to take down all of the wash off the lines and put it away. And she came home, and she's like, why is all my laundry in a bunch? And it's all dry, and it was been raining all day. Just happened to get caught on a video camera on the doorbell, but that's it. Because he didn't care that anybody noticed him, and it wasn't from inside these walls that something good happened. There is goodness that is happening around this world, and we need to focus and see that goodness and say, this is because of Jesus. All of the goodness is happening because of what Jesus did and gave us this life that we have. It's a beautiful video. You should go watch it. And then someone put music behind it. It's even better. Leave the walking on the water to Jesus. Feed the hungry. Hands up. Have you ever tried to walk on water as a kid? I got this. There is some amazing miracles that Jesus did. And perhaps you're going to be the next that walks on water. But let's not worry about it too much. Go feed the hungry. Go love those who are loveless. Look for the beautiful fruits around. There's always a second chance. I was with my friends in Vancouver this week, just some pastors, and we were talking about what really makes a Christ-centered church. I think all of our churches are really trying to center on Jesus. But part of the beauty is a story of redemption. There's always a story, and there's always a redemption arc. Luke 13. Verse 6, then he told the parable. A man had a fig tree planted in its vineyard, and he came looking for fruit and found none. So he said to the man working in the vineyard, see here, for 3 years I have come looking for fruit on the fig tree, and I still find none. Cut it down. Why should it be wasting the soil? He replied, Sir, let it alone for 1 more year until I dig around it and put manure on it. Amen. If it bears fruit next year, well and good. There's always another chance. You may come here today and be like, actually, I haven't borne much good fruit in my life at all. That is not an indicator of how the rest of your life is going to go. What has happened in the past, when we've had those years where there's been no peaches, that doesn't mean the next year there's not going to be an amazing bunch of peaches. That doesn't mean all the Eat More bars are going to be gross. That means there's a second chance for each and every single one of us, because we're always going to be pulled into having the deceptive understanding of what good fruit looks like. But we have this chance, as us here, as Valley Road, as people that love Jesus, to go and to bear good fruit. How do we become good fruit? When we get to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, everyone then who hears the words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on the house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on a rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rains fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against the house and it fell. And great was its fall. So as we conclude, look at the Beatitudes. Look and love the outsider. Look for those that love their enemies. Look for those who don't agree to disagree, but agree to live in a love even though they disagree. Look for those who do things and aren't looking for recognition. Look for those who live and pray for the kingdom of Jesus. Look for those who look like the kingdom of Jesus. Look for those who judge well and take care of their own logs in their own eyes before they're reaching for the speck in yours. Look for those who trust and refuse to let worry ruin their lives. Look for those who ask and seek and knock, but are also available for others who ask and seek and knock. Look for those who do to others what they would have them do to them. And always we will be people that bear good fruit. There's beauty in the images of love. We have Mother Teresa, people that love. There's so many stories of people that love. I won't go into that. But the beauty, the best image of love is the image of Jesus on the cross. The image of Jesus in his love, giving himself for each and every one of us. Not to quickly say a prayer and move on and live our own kingdom, live our own lives, but to live centered on Jesus. Living out the Sermon on the Mount every day. Knowing that not every day we will do it perfectly, but we can come back to who he is and recognize the beauty and love of our enemies. Recognize that blessed are those who mourn, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who places God's kingdom first. I want to read that as we go, as we close, because I forgot to memorize it all. I want to play a little bit. Let's stand together and reflect on the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor of spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the poor in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom